How sushi has become commoditized, Starbucks laying off 900 workers, why Americans are eating less breakfast, and much more. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Repertoire Report. My name is Ray, and there will be a solo episode with me today covering the biggest news in the food industry. Before we begin, if you're listening on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe to follow this page. We put out some great content for the food industry. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, go ahead and please leave a review. It helps us with engagement and gets us more traction on those platforms. Okay, so jumping in right away today, the one story that I found very interesting today was this New York Times article put out by Julia Moskin on September 22nd. The title is Sushi is Bigger Than Ever in America. There's one main reason. Subtitled, Once considered rarefied and exotic in the United States, sushi has become something entirely different in the last 5 years, convenience food. She goes on to say, in 1985, when Molly Ringwald's character in The Breakfast Club pulls out a bento box of sushi at the fictional Shermer High School, the other students are unnerved by this mystifying lunch. In 2025, when lunch period starts at the real Stevenson High School in Lincolnshire, a Chicago suburb similar to the movie's setting, students race to line up at the sushi bar in the school cafeteria. How did raw fish and seaweed become staples of the American diet? She goes on to say that sushi restaurants proliferated between the East and West Coasts, and as infrastructure is built for storing and transporting frozen seafood, American sushi became convenience food. She goes on to say that in interviews, sushi chefs, marketers, researchers, and wholesalers all agreed that the COVID pandemic prompted an unexpected and enormous spike in the American appetite for sushi. As people tired of home cooking and of takeout staples like pizza and burritos, sushi at home became popular, whether delivered from Nobu in Beverly Hills or picked up from a Target in Minneapolis. So she goes on to say that said sales of sushi have jumped by 50% since 2019 to 1 million rolls per day for the Kroger supermarket chain. So before the pandemic, to-go sushi was about 6% of total business across the 12 Blue Ribbon sushi restaurants spread across the country. And now, according to the co-owner, Bruce Bromberg, it's 30%. They go on to say that even Chef Morimoto said that across his global restaurant group, to-go sushi sales doubled during the pandemic and have remained high since dining rooms opened. They go on to say, from Richard Berry of the National Fisheries Institute, we saw a whole new entrance of consumers into the category. The millennial consumer grew up with sushi. He said it went from exotic to everywhere in one generation. Quote, once a small niche of the seafood business, sushi is now the industry's growth leader. Most of that growth is not happening in $300 per head omakase restaurants, although she goes on to say they're proliferating. It's happening in gas stations and big box stores, bowling alleys and stadiums, and U.S. Army commissaries and amusement parks. Retail sushi, also called deli sushi, because of its usual location in supermarkets, is one of the fastest growing segments in supermarkets overall, according to Circana, a market research firm. In 2024, retail sushi was a $2.8 billion business, up 7% from 2023. Because of this growth appetite, high-end restaurants are also investing in sushi to go. And I just want to stop there before going on. So a lot of quick things. I'll say this. Sushi is one of my favorite meals, and I love it in all of its forms. I've been to amazing omakase tasting menus. I am also a frequent buyer of Target sushi, the salmon and avocado rolls. Sushi for me is like my favorite form of preparation when it comes to cooking. Rice and raw fish just go together hand in hand. They're like I said, one of my favorites. And so to see them that to basically see sushi become a commodity for the American diner is very interesting in a couple of different aspects. The fact that sushi has grown so much, both for high-end restaurants and also retail and like mid-sized markets, shows that if you're investing into the restaurant industry, into the food industry, then you will obviously then be wanting to invest in like a sushi concept. So to have the ability to invest in a sushi concept, to serve this type of food, to serve what people want, like that is a big deal. So if you're a chef and you're looking to open a business and you are able to offer sushi at a fair price, then like this might be the way to go for the future. But the thing I really want to take away from this article is that if you aren't keeping up with trends in the restaurant industry, you will fall victim to not being keyed into what customers want. And the idea that sushi is so big right now, and it's gone from, like I said, and like the article shares, an exotic, quote unquote, like other realm type dish to like something that you can just pick up at Target, shows not only that Americans love this food, but they have also like accepted it as the norm. Like sushi is, I would say, as normal now as a burger. Like it just is a part of our diets, a part of what our food choices are. And so to see companies in high end restaurants kind of noticing this is a big deal because I think it then helps to kind of broaden your purview on what you're serving. If you're not serving sushi, would you consider it? Would you and how would you do it? I know that I've worked for restaurant groups that had their own dedicated sushi programs, and they were big draws and big parts of the menu. And just to do it well and do the research and put out a product that was approachable yet really delicious was a key part of that group. You see a place like Wegmans, one of my favorite grocery stores. They have their own dedicated sushi program. And again, I know there's gonna be restaurant people that are like, "What do you mean talking about sushi from Target or Wegmans?" You will you won't get that same quality of like a beautiful Japanese high-end restaurant. But there is this ability to have commodity and delicious food in the sushi section, and I think we need to be aware of that. The article goes on to say that at the Sugarfish restaurants in Southern California and New York City, each order is packed into a patented box created by Clement Mock, a co-founder of Sugarfish and an esteemed digital designer who was the creative director of Apple from 1982 to 1988. Quote, visually, my influences were a white plate, a bento box, and an Apple package. Practically, the challenge was much harder to match the takeout experience to the high standards of Sugarfish's founding sushi chef, Kazunori Nozawa. Warm rice, cool fish, sauces brushed on at the last minute. He said the move from digital to analog design was difficult, working around parameters like the 30 to 60-minute window that Mr. Nozawa approved for consuming sushi after it is made, and testing dozens of cardboard samples to find one that didn't absorb soy sauce and prevented warm rice from sticking. This cool compartment, which I will, I would suggest you look up in this article, linked in the description. The box has compartments for maki, sashimi, and nigiri, a slot for a napkin and chopsticks, sauces and color-coded cups, and a visual guide printed on the underside of the lid like a box of See's chocolates, which is awesome. They were awarded this patent in 2017. If we go over she goes on to say at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, the sushi is made from scratch on campus, from farmed Norwegian salmon and Atlantic tuna netted off of the New England coast. The school has won Best Campus Food from the Princeton Review 9 times in a row. The school's culinary director, Alexander Ong, says that sushi consumption has grown 30% year over year since he came on in 2018, faster than any type of food. He said the school's 22,000 undergrads, most of whom are on all-you-can-eat meal plan, often visit the counter more than once. They eat it first thing in the morning and all day up until bedtime. And so she goes on to just kind of look at like how sushi has been dominated, and also just kind of, and what I find important, the fact that raw fish. I feel like there is a stigma of like it could go bad really quickly. In the last decade, according to the CDC, there have been only 2 outbreaks of foodborne illness connected to the raw fish and sushi. In the same period, there have been dozens from poultry and beef. So while the data shows that consumers are more worried about getting sick from sushi, the reality is due to like the handling, the care, the refrigeration, actually getting sick from poultry or beef products are more likely to happen to you rather than sushi products. So if Darren Cipher, she goes on to say, a food industry analyst, Circana said sushi is a unicorn in the grab and go category, liked by both men and women, urban and suburban, young and middle-aged diners. It checks many boxes for health-conscious consumers: protein-rich, gluten-free, dairy-free, meatless, and containing few ultra-processed ingredients. In the catering business, it's popular as a no-cook pescatarian and vegetarian option for mass-feeding events. She goes on to end with this. So Kamahachi is the oldest sushi bar in Chicago, run by Julia Sindler, whose grandmother, Marian Konishi, first opened in the Old Town neighborhood in '67. Miss Konishi made traditional sushi, mostly nigiri, tekkemaki, and kappamaki, for the Japanese-American community that clustered around the Midwest Buddhist temple. Like her, many of them had left the West Coast after being interned in camps during World War II. Miss Sindler, 60, said that after nearly 60 years, the restaurant is well equipped for delivery and takeout, but she's troubled by the popular demand for ever more creative rolls with ingredients like mango, jalapeno, and cream cheese, which I can't stand cream cheese in sushi. I cannot stand it. Quote, the more we explore different roles, she said, the more I worry about getting away from the origins of sushi. She ends with, I like to see the young kids come in with their grandparents and show them how it's done. So a great article. I didn't share all of it. Really, really suggest it. This idea that sushi, the perception is changing. People love it. It's safer to eat than beef and poultry. It's done really well commercially. It is a unicorn. It is universally loved. I say all this to say that if you own a restaurant, if you own a business, and you have the ability to share or put some sort of sushi on the menu, great opportunity. But beyond that, understanding this, some foods s- come and just transcend what people assume of them, what people expect out of them, and sushi is that unicorn right now. I think it's awesome to see. It is my favorite food. Like every birthday, I go and take myself out to a nice sushi dinner, um, and I just love seeing it adopted. I know there is part of me though, like the crazy rolls, the cream cheese, the all this different stuff. Like I'm not a big fan of that. I know that for purists, that's not great. But overall, the adoption of sushi has become so great in America, and I think it's something everyone should be focused on.
Hang on, interrupting the show here to suggest another insight that I shared recently. I partnered with our friends at 7 Shifts to do a deep dive on their latest industry report, talking all about the current state of tech in restaurants in 2025. They did the legwork to ask over 500 restaurants a series of questions, and they bucketed those folks into 4 stages that you might be in, depending on how analog or digital you are operating right now in your business, and the real numbers behind what that means. Beyond that quantified data, I'm also a big fan of how they touch on the qualitative measures too, and how better tools can lead to happier and better performing teams. The video is out now on the Justin Khanna YouTube channel. It's linked in the show notes. It's a quick 8-minute summary just to save you some time, and I'd love if that's what you listen to next. Okay, back to the show.
Next on the agenda is big news from Starbucks. This is coming off of abcnews.go. The title is Starbucks to lay off 900 workers, close stores in North America. These actions are part of a $1 billion restructuring effort. Quote, coffee giant Starbucks will lay off workers. Sorry, this is by Max Zahn, by the way. Quote, coffee giant Starbucks will lay off workers and close stores as part of a $1 billion restructuring plan, CEO Brian Nichols said in a memo to employees on Thursday. The company will slash 900 employees in non-retail roles across North America, Nichols said. The store closures will amount to a roughly 1% decline in the total number of Starbucks locations in North America in this fiscal year, after accounting for some store openings. While we're making good progress, there is much more to do to build a better, stronger, and more resilient Starbucks, says Nichols. Shares of Starbucks ticked only slightly higher in pre-market trading after the announcement early Thursday morning. Quote, Starbucks weathered sluggish sales in recent years as customers grappled with a years-long bout of elevated inflation. The company has experienced 6 consecutive quarters of declining same-store sales, a metric that examines performance at individual locations over time. Starbucks has sought to improve the interior of many of its stores in an effort to draw customers and boost sales. In a review of its locations, the company identified stores where such changes would not be achievable. Quote, during the review, we identified coffee houses where we're unable to create the physical environment our customers and partners expect, or where we don't see a path to financial performance. These locations will be closed. Quote, each year we open and close coffee houses for a variety of reasons, from financial performance to lease expirations. This is a more significant action that we understand will impact partners and customers. Our coffee houses are centers of the community, and closing any location is difficult. The company expects to end fiscal year 2025 with 18,300 store locations in the US and Canada, and Starbucks plans to inform employees this week at stores designated for closure. They also say they aim to provide comprehensive severance to the employees being affected. So, I've covered Starbucks a lot this last year on this show. I've covered their issues. We covered the whole third space thing, how they wanted to really redefine their brand. During COVID, they really leaned into to-go options. They really lacked in-store dining, in-store visits. And so they've been really trying to rebrand themselves as a company where you're going there to the coffee shops to dine, to enjoy coffee, to meet others, see others, do work, have meetings and whatnot. Because they feel like as a brand, they've really lost that. So this restructuring sucks. I mean, it really does for everyone working there, all the jobs affected. I'm not sure how many stores yet are closing, but anytime people lose jobs, it's worrisome. It's worrisome that a company as large as Starbucks can't get their act together. They've consistently underperformed, and being a company that is so profound in the coffee space, in an item that people go to all the time, it's really insane to see them not be able to do well. Their reach, their funding, the brand identity, I really feel like they're just making really poor decisions. I bring this up on the podcast just to show that like business decisions are always necessary. How your brand is perceived by others is always important. Even if your brand takes off, even if you get a lot of agency with a customer base, even if you have major fans and you're known by everyone around the world, constantly being aware of how your brand perceived is crucial because in any minute consumers can just like decide to go elsewhere. There's too many options nowadays for people to go and have another experience elsewhere. So, in my opinion, Starbucks has really lost its brand identity. It's really lost what it meant for them to be a third space. And I think they're seeing, unfortunately, the results of that. And unfortunately, that means that people that work for them are going to suffer, which I hate to see as well. So I feel for all those being laid off. I've been in layoffs before. It is awful. And then, yeah, just the restructuring. I don't know where they go, really. I mean, obviously, they're huge. Are they almost too big to fail at a certain level? Yes, but they are not doing well. No, they are failing. And it'll be interesting to see where they go. All right. The next thing I wanted to talk about today was this update on a report I am very bullish on, or just care a lot about. If you've followed me on Line Cook Thoughts for any amount of time, you'll know that I have been really a major proponent for childhood hunger. I did a fundraiser for No Kid Hungry. I think they're a great organization. I grew up needing to use SNAP benefits and needing to use benefits from the government to ensure that I could eat properly. Something happened this week that I don't see a lot of people talking about. I'll go off civil.com. It's been reported elsewhere. This is by Rebecca Alvey. Title: USDA cancels one-of-a-kind report on food insecurity. Quote, the U.S. Department of Agriculture will stop publishing a report on food insecurity that anti-hunger groups say is a gold standard in understanding hunger nationwide. The agency confirmed reports this weekend that it will cease future household food security reports, calling it, quote, redundant, costly, and politicized. In fact, the USDA's Economic Research Service compiles a report by collating pre-existing data. That data comes from the hunger-specific questions that are already part of the annual census. The anti-hunger groups rebuked the decision and urged the agency to reverse course. Eric Mitchell, president of the Alliance to End Hunger, said the survey has served as a test on how well national policies and programs are working to lessen food insecurity, including the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which again I've had to use myself. Quote, with the continuing worries about food inflation as well as significant cuts to America's largest food assistance program, SNAP, this move is a blow to policymakers and advocates who rely on the data to improve the lives of our food insecure neighbors. Gina Platanino, intern SNAP director at the Food Research and Action Center, called the timing of the announcement suspect given rising concern about the impact of tariffs on grocery prices and the passage of Republicans' One Big Beautiful Bill. The massive budget bill included historic cuts to SNAP funding and is projected to cut benefits for nearly 3 million Americans. Quote, while there are other federal reports that evaluate hunger, and this is important to note, none have the same specificity and objectivity as the Household Food Security Report. It asks more detailed questions that help analysts understand how other environmental factors, policy shifts, or major events at the time may have caused a person to experience food insecurity. For example, the report allows analysts to see how the Great Recession led to spikes in food insecurity and how the influx of government assistance during COVID-19 pandemic prevented these spikes. This data is a one-of-a-kind data source, says Joseph Lobrera, Director of Food Assistance at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. While the report began in 1995 under the Clinton administration, Lobrera noted it stemmed from a Reagan administration task force on food assistance, which found at the time no concrete way of measuring hunger. So if you look at this report, it was born out of a bipartisan effort. And I really want to make it clear that like childhood hunger, again, is not a partisan issue, it's a bipartisan issue. Going on to say that the survey model has been incorporated into other federal surveys on hunger, like the National Health Interview Survey and National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. Both ask questions about food insecurity, but the NHANES data comes in a 2-year cycle, and the sample is not large enough for demographic or state-level analysis. The USDA report, however, provides information on an annual basis and uses a large enough sample size that analysts can better understand food insecurity at the national and state level. It also includes some demographic breakdowns to better understand what puts individuals more at risk of food insecurity. Quote, we need to measure what we care about. If we care about people getting enough to eat, then there's no other data collection mechanism and report that will help us gauge the best now into the future, Lobrera said. Now, I'm just going to read you also one quick thing No Kid Hungry put up, and I really thought it was powerful. I shared it on my Instagram, and it is this. With what seems like a never-ending news cycle, you may have missed a very important update regarding the USDA's annual Household Food Insecurity Report. Over the weekend, the admin confirmed its plans to eliminate this critical report. It's important because this data is used to show trends in food insecurity nationwide, and in turn illuminate how policy decisions in the current economy impact the millions of children and families in America who experience hunger. This research also helps ensure that we're wisely investing taxpayer dollars efficiently and effectively in programs that work to end hunger. It's no coincidence that this news comes after the most extreme cuts to SNAP with the passing of H.R. 1 earlier this year. This decision will cause a spike in hunger in the coming years. But with the rising cost of food, the focus should be on smart policies to eliminate hunger and not to eliminate the evidence of hunger in our country. And where I stand on this is that same message. Like, food insecurity has been an issue in our country for decades, but the fact that this admin is cutting the reporting on it is startling. And in any administration, cutting reporting on childhood hunger, on how people are not getting food adequately, is concerning. It's not right. And if we're going to make cuts to systems, we should probably figure out how that affects others. And instead, we're making cuts, and then we're also not reporting on those cuts. We're not reporting on the effects of those. And for those of you that may argue this is politicized, it goes beyond politics. It goes beyond policy decisions like this, like their Great Recession, the COVID-19 pandemic. This information was invaluable, but the pandemic came, and we were able to utilize this data and to see how like government funding actually helped and prevented a lot of hunger in the United States during a time that was unprecedented. So this goes beyond just partisan politics. This is a report helping determine how people who are hungry in this nation are becoming hungry and how we can support them. And by getting rid of it, it makes that job that much harder. And it makes it that much less of a focus. And I'm always going to be an advocate for knowing where people are hungry. I had to use these programs. They're very personal to me. I've done No Kid Hungry donations. I've done fundraisers for them. So to see in the same breath us want to make this country healthy again, but then not report on food insecurity is it's really contradictory. So I really hope the current administration reconsiders this. I really hope that the USDA reconsiders this, and I'm sharing it to be a voice sharing that we really should reconsider removing this report. It is a report that is needed. It is fundamental. It gives us clearer insights into hunger, and hunger is an important issue that is not easily fixed, and to not even know where to start to begin fixing it is a major problem. So I just wanted to report on that. I think it's important, especially if you at all care about the food security in our country. All right, next up is from the Food Institute. Why American diners are skipping breakfast. The breakfast day part has been a big struggle for many restaurants of late, according to this article by George Hajar. So he goes on to say a recent analysis of 22,000 plus Google reviews identified the restaurant chains that customers say have the slowest service, and IHOP topped the list. Meanwhile, fellow breakfast-centric restaurants Cracker Barrel, First Watch, and Denny's ranked 4th, 5th, and 6th on the list, respectively. Quote, breakfast is really one of the toughest day parts to win, Milos Eric, general manager at Oysterlink, told the Food Institute. People are in a rush, they're loyal to their morning routines, and unforgiving if the service isn't absolutely perfect and on time. He goes on to say that the day part challenges restaurants because it's very demanding in terms of labor and supply. You have to open earlier, pay staff for prep, cooking, and cleanup during hours that generate low profits. You also have to get coffee, fresh eggs, and baked goods at the precise time. Making matters worse is that fast food chains are losing breakfast customers to convenience stores. Morning meal traffic to QSR chains rose 1% in the 3 months ending in July, while visits to food-forward convenience stores climbed 9% in the same period. Quote, breakfast is one of the first day parts to be cut when consumers are tightening their wallets. Another element at play is an increased focus on health, where diners might feel they're more likely to get a nutritious breakfast at home. They go on to a section that McDonald's has long been the breakfast leader among fast food chains, dominating the morning day part thanks to menu items like the Egg McMuffin. So this is interesting. Morning visits to McDonald's accounted for 33.5% of the chain's traffic early in 2019, but that number has dipped to 29.9% by 2025. Quote, we, as well as the rest of the industry, are seeing that the breakfast day part is absolutely the weakest day part in the day, CEO Chris Kemzinski of McDonald's said. Year-over-year morning traffic to fast food chains has fallen every quarter for the last 3 years, and Portillo's recently ended its breakfast trial in the Chicago area. It now aims to simplify operations in the near term. And then in 2024, Taco Bell announced it was giving franchisees the option of whether or not to continue to offer breakfast. So the biggest thing here, De La Pena says, is the largest hurdles are improving consumers' value perception of the breakfast day part so they feel that the spend is worth it, while building or rebuilding the habit for many consumers of getting their morning caffeine fixes and breakfast out. The launch of IHOP's first ever value meal is a fantastic example of a chain working to win back customers. It shouldn't be game over for restaurant brands when it comes to serving breakfast. Instead, this should be a moment of reflection and innovation. So, breakfast, you need it quick, you need it fast, it needs to be nutritious, keep you full, all those different things. And so when you are unable to meet those demands, customers go away. I do think there's two key things. One, breakfast is three. Let's go on one. The first one is breakfast is hard. It's a hard spot to make money in. And I feel like if you are not making adequate money as a restaurant with breakfast options, then maybe you cut it. It's a nice to have, but the data is showing right now that it's very, very hard to be making money in it. I think the second thing is that consumers are tightening their wallets, as I said here. And it makes sense to me that they go to a convenience store to get a meal because it's a cheaper option and it might be just as good in their eyes. Americans don't, while breakfast is important in certain aspects, I don't think Americans diners see it as important as a dinner. And so if they're going to spend their money somewhere, they're probably going to save it for dinner or a hearty lunch. I think the third thing is breakfast is always a difficult ask. It always requires more labor, requires more hours of operation. So if you are going to do breakfast, it better be pretty damn good. And it better be something where people can rely on. So I always think that breakfast is risky in restaurants, especially in independent restaurants. If it's something you can do and do well and make a profit on, you should. But do know that it is getting harder and Americans are eating less of it. And they're actually relying on grocery stores and convenience stores to fill that meal. All right, my next story for today is another Kitchen Confidential Reddit thread. We're not going to do these every week, but I thought this one was important. It was 3 days ago, and I just thought it was interesting to talk about. So this is in the Reddit is r dash Kitchen Confidential. Evie loves memes was the Reddit user. And it said, blindsided by my kitchen being closed. Now what? Been in the industry for 21 years, 11 at my current job. Got told Sunday that this Saturday is my last day. Obviously, I've been putting in applications at other restaurants, but are there any non-cooking fields any of you have success, comfort, ease in? Went to college for 7 years, but dropped out and don't have any other marketable non-kitchen related skills. And I actually wanted to share the responses. I thought this was a great thing. I had this happen to me. This is like the story of my life. So before I share mine, I want to share some responses. So Primary Golf 779, Chef Flair and Reddit, they say check restaurant adjacent stuff, Ecolab rep or tech, sales rep for food suppliers, etc. Also look into production cooking, schools, hospitals, or corporate dining. And then someone had responded to their comment, I work in a school and it's early hours, but I'm done by 1, and in a week and a half, it's fall break. Money isn't great, but I'm in a pretty poor district. Favorite thing about working that shift in winter was there's still a few hours of daylight left. Someone else says, if you want to keep looking or keep cooking, look into assistant living places or nursing homes. They need cooks, but the atmosphere is a lot more relaxed. Someone else says, I'm the lead produce cutter at my grocery store, prepping fruit trays, catering, and such. I seem to be making more than most kitchen positions in my area, and the only real stress comes from the corporate grocery store side of things. The work I do is definitely not difficult. Someone else says, I worked in kitchens for 7 years after high school, and once I got sick of the lifestyle, I took an entry-level job doing industrial manufacturing, sewing climbing equipment, and never looked back. Now I sew custom upholstery for off-road trucks and vans, and I love it. X Food Service says, come be a cook at a long-term care facility. We need more real cooks. It's not glamorous. Justin shared this on last week's podcast, so about the benefits of it. But the residents may love you one minute and literally spit at you the next, but the benefits and perks are insane, and at least at good facilities. And then, someone says, looking to test kitchens, having a long resume of culinary experience typically is enough for them if you don't have a degree. Someone else says, I slid into commercial food production pretty easily, basically just a prep cook now. You get to do things like make HACCP plans and deal with FDA instead of the health department, which is really cool. Went to a trade union, paid schooling, yearly raises, benefits, travel opportunities, etc. And then someone else said, I switched completely. I work at one of the big 3 banks in the US. I miss cooking, but I work Monday through Friday, 1 Saturday a month, and I have all the holidays off plus PTO. More benefits than I know what to do with. I signed up for a 401k and lots of room for growth. I took a pay cut, but it's honestly been worth it. Been there a year and I'm applying for a promotion that my boss has been prepping me for. # no regrets. All right. So I wanted to share those before I gave my thing. So if you don't know, I've shared this a lot on My Cook Thoughts, but if you're new to my story, I worked in restaurants up into the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2020, I was working for a restaurant group. Unfortunately, I lost my position, moved back home to Buffalo out of the Chicago area, and couldn't find work. I literally I've applied to a bunch of restaurants, wasn't able to find anything on work. So then I ended up working for a company called Freshly. I found a job. It was basically, and I had to give you my background. I have a bachelor's degree in food business. I don't have a food science background at all. I've just worked in restaurants and I have my culinary degree. I was able to get a position with a company called Freshly that no longer exists. And that role was culinary assurance and implementation chef. And what I did there is I went to the manufacturer, I moved to Maryland, went to this food manufacturing facility, and my job was to test the recipes that were being developed at scale. I was also tasked with tasting the ingredients every day to make sure they were to spec to the recipes being sent to customers. So my role involved my experience with culinary arts, obviously with some product management, but beyond that, like my whole team was a mix of people with degrees, no degrees, but all had a culinary background. So like that is a great entryway for me into food manufacturing, in my opinion, to be able to go to a position where you can test food, taste food, um, work with development, work with manufacturing, work with commercialization is a big skill set to have. Those are great positions. I'm now an R&D chef. I've worked in food manufacturing since that transition, developing recipes, working on operation stuff and whatnot. So being able to kind of find a bridge into food manufacturing to me is one of the best things you can do. Because like one of the comments said, not every food manufacturer requires you to have a science background. I definitely do not. Um, Now there are some positions like the meat scientist positions or the flavor technician positions. They do require that background. I would not qualify for that. And if you don't have a food science background, you wouldn't either. But you would be surprised how many R&D chef positions, culinary assurance positions, and I just want to say this: when I left restaurants and I saw this culinary assurance job, I took it being like, I don't even know if I would like this. It sounded kind of boring. It sounded kind of run of the mill because it was like, oh, I'm going to be in a facility, I'm going to be in a plant with amounts of food and whatnot. But the ability to get that skill set, I actually ended up loving the job because the ability to get that skill set, it's just a different world working with food at that scale. And the ability to go in and do all of that was it helps elevate my career, it helped give me new skill sets, and it helped me just like evolve who I was as a culinary professional. I saw restaurants as my whole career, and when I was unable to find work, I chose to do something else, and it really just blossomed not only in what I was able to do, but what I wanted it to do. My whole career trajectory and goals changed for what I wanted to do for my job. So, for the person saying, blindsided by, being able to, or blindsided by your kitchen being closed, I'd give a couple things. Look in your area for tertiary culinary roles. Maybe it's a teacher at a local community college. Maybe it's a cook at a healthcare facility. It's a cook at a store like a Wegmans or another grocery chain. Maybe it's a food manufacturer if you live in an area for food manufacturing. If you're willing to move, you can often find companies that will help you relocate that are large, like a food manufacturer, which I was the case for me. So, like, find if you're willing to move, you can go explore different industries. And I don't know this person's situation, but the ability to move is also really important. But even if you can't, if you can find something tertiary to food, you'd be surprised at how many people that have not worked in restaurants or aren't versed in food, how willing they are to hire someone simply because they know what good food tastes like. So don't doubt that. Don't doubt yourself. And my biggest piece of advice for anyone moving out of restaurants into the food industry is let them tell you no. Do not say that you can't do it. Do not say that you're not qualified. Let a company or a hiring manager or another position tell you no. Don't automatically assume you cannot get something, that you are not qualified for something, that you would not be good at something. Let the job tell you no. So many times I've seen people try to leave restaurants and go into new industries and just not even like fully commit or not start or not go into certain things because they said that they were not able to do it. They deemed they were not capable. And that is just such a wrong way of doing it. If you feel like you might be good at something, or you want to take a risk, or you want to try a new position, or you want to try a new sector of the industry, or you want to go elsewhere, like that person with the banking, let the job tell you no, apply for it, go through the process, and hell, you might even get it and find something you love completely different outside of restaurants. So that is my advice for that. All right. That is all I have for this week on this Repertoire Report. Thank you all again for listening. If you are watching on YouTube, please leave a like and subscribe. If you're following on a podcast platform like Spotify or Apple, leaving us a review and your thoughts on the podcast would be great. If you have any advice for people leaving restaurants or who have been laid off and need a new job, please comment that below. And I will see you all in the next Repertoire Report. Thank you all so much.